Hey everyone, welcome to Dalton Draws, the series where the title tells you exactly what the show is. I've got a trio of illustrations for you today, so let's open up the sketchpad and dive right in. First up is a scene from Shadow Generations, or at least my interpretation of a line of dialogue from the game. Throughout the overworld, you can talk to various characters. Most are relevant to Shadow's past or present, but then there's this one outlier. One character he had never spoken to in any of the games. That's right, I'm talking about Big the Cat. One of Big's lines of dialogue has him asking if Shadow can teach him how to use chaos control. That's funny enough on its own, but I loved the idea of taking that seriously. When Shadow meets Big, his reaction is to just smirk, like he's amused, and I genuinely love the idea that Shadow would befriend Big and be willing to try and teach him how to use that ability. So now you know the origin of the picture, but what about Shadow Generations? What do I think of the game? Well, I freaking love it, man. It's so dang good. I was kind of tired of the boost formula in Sonic games and was ready to see it go, but this game, it made me realize I was wrong. There's still more room to explore and evolve that gameplay style. Hell, I even said, repeatedly, that I was tired of 2D sections in modern Sonic games after Frontiers. But even the 2D levels in Shadow Generations kick ass. For a while, the 2D sections felt like a crutch to the level design, in my opinion. Like, you just saw the same strings of basic challenges repeated over and over and over without too many gimmicks. Homing attack chains, stomps, wall kicks, you know the drill. The 2D sections weren't really doing anything that couldn't be done more dynamically in 3D. But then Shadow comes in with the glide and the doom spears and using chaos control to slow down obstacles, and it all just flows so well. I also love that they fully went ahead with splitting 2D and 3D into their own levels, rather than mixing and matching both. The result is some of the best modern-style 2D levels, and honestly, the best 3D levels the games have seen in well over a decade. And the story! Man, I grew up with the adventure games, and I live for that kind of earnest, shonen anime energy that Adventure 2 brought to the table. Having a game that returns to those story beats and honors them, it genuinely warms my heart. It's silly and ridiculous, but some of the scenes in this game were genuinely emotional. Frontiers kinda got there for me, especially in the DLC. I loved the ending that had, but it was also a little too self-serious at times for its own good. That said, it was also the tonal reset that the games really needed at the time. It was also refreshing to play a Sonic game that just felt like it had a real budget for the first time since, God, probably Unleashed. To this day, nothing has topped that opening cutscene. But this is the first time in ages where I've seen the cutscene animations and thought, wow, that's actually pretty good. All in all, I expected Shadow Generations to just be good, but instead it's my favorite Sonic game in years. It's honestly a more consistently great game than the original Generations, and it comes with that game too. I wish it had done more to, remaster Generations, but this port runs significantly better on Steam Deck than the old PC version, so it's got that going for it at least. Anyways, play Shadow Generations. It's what Big the Cat would want you to do, and you don't want to disappoint Big. He believes in you. Speaking of characters you don't want to disappoint, our next drawing for this episode is Ogerpon from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I've already done a video on these games in the past, which you should absolutely check out, link in the description. But Ogerpon isn't from the base game, she's from the Teal Mask DLC. I originally started this sketch for the 1-year anniversary of that DLC, but I didn't get around to finishing it until a few months later. Originally, the plan was to just draw a simple doodle of Ogerpon, since a number of other artists were also drawing her around the same time, and I do like to get in on an art trend every now and then. I tried a few basic poses before having an idea that just completely changed the course of this picture. I was going to draw her with Majora's Mask. But then I thought about it even more, and the idea evolved even further. Why just that mask? Why not every wearable mask from The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask? That's her whole gimmick after all, and that would be the ultimate escalation of it. The mask-wearing Pokemon, wearing transformation masks from a game all about masks. So, I got to work. I used the mask menu from the 3DS version to get clean references for all of the masks. I adjusted the layout a few times to space out the masks and give the art room to breathe, and then I started working on the line art and the coloring. So that's how the illustration came to be, but let's talk about the DLC for a bit. I already had pretty positive feelings about Scarlet and Violet even before the DLC came out. Like, don't get me wrong, the game should not have released in the state that it did. but even with my growing fatigue with open world games, it was some of the most fun I've ever had with this series. I loved my time in Paldea, and the story was the best it's been since Gen 5. Hell, the final part of the story is one of the coolest parts of any Pokemon game. Both Legends Arceus and Gen 9 suffer from releasing too early, and it's a shame, because they're the first time in ages where I felt a genuine sense of ambition from the franchise. Despite the tech issues, I'm excited to see where the series goes from here. I haven't finished all of the DLC yet. Indigo Disc has a lot of Gen 5 nostalgia going for it, which really appeals to me directly. It's just a matter of free time. See, another RPG I was super excited for released when I was in the middle of my time with the DLC. So I ended up taking a break to play Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, a game that's, like 100 hours long. It consumed my life for months, man, and Pokemon got put to the side during that time. But I did play the Teal Mask all of the way through. Not only that, I completed the Kitakami Pokedex. That's how much I was enjoying it, and part of that was the story. I often don't care about the legendary Pokemon in the later generations, but they did a good job of endearing Ogerpon to the player. And more than that, I really love what they did with Kieran as a rival. I talked about this in, of all things, my Harvest Moon 64 video, but I really don't like friendly rivals in Pokemon games. People complain about Hop, but my go-to is Caleb and Serena from Pokemon X and Y. You just see their self-confidence shatter as you keep winning battles against them, and as the player, that's incredibly unsatisfying. The player shouldn't feel bad about winning a battle. If they did more with that narratively, then maybe it could have been effective, but in the end, I just found myself more annoyed than anything else. But Kieran has the opposite reaction. This dude goes off the deep end as you keep battling him. You have so many rematches in a short span of time, and he just gets increasingly angry as it goes on. I've heard people make the argument with friendly rivals that the dynamic is reversed, that you are the rival, but this is the first time where I've felt like that actually applies. And last up, this illustration isn't based on a game or show or movie. It's from my webcomic, Smash Time Stories. A few months back, I finally relaunched the series after a pretty long hiatus. For the longest time, my schedule wasn't allowing me to work on it, and I was never super satisfied with the early chapters that were drawn back when I was in college. Initially, I started what I called the Recharge Project, to remake the first few chapters and write a new prologue. I wanted to make a better entry point for the series and start building it up again, leading into the next Smash Time Stories animation that I've been working on for years now. At this point though, it really is just a reboot, one made with better planning and years of extra experience. The series follows Pierre and Kayla, a couple living in a small town by the sea. Kayla struggles to live up to her father's fame as the Smash Time World Champion, a legendary boxer with an undefeated record. Pierre, on the other hand, wants to forge his own legacy, but feels aimless in life. But their lives are changed forever when Pierre receives a mysterious invitation in the mail. That letter is the start of an action-packed adventure of self-discovery and finding your place in the world. It's a story about the legacies people leave behind, the heroes and villains that leave their mark on the world, and those who follow in their footsteps. Pierre's the strong, silent type. He's always on guard, trying to think his way through problems and fighting through his anxiety. Kayla, on the other hand, is the kind of person to act first, ask questions later. She'll run headfirst into danger without a second thought, but being the daughter of the world champion, she can usually fight her way through anything. The relaunch began in September 2024, and as of now, the entire first chapter is available to read over at smashtimestories.com. It's also on smashtunes.com, Blue Sky, Instagram, and in the future I'm hoping to bring it to more sites like Comic Fury and Webtoon. I've also been toying with the idea of doing motion comics for it in the future, to bring the series over to YouTube. But that costs money, and after buying a new computer last year, funds have been pretty tight for a while now. But hey, if you want to see that in the future, you can help support my work by joining the Toon Crew over on Patreon. Patrons get early access to new pages of the comic, as well as behind-the-scenes updates. Your support helps me to keep making awesome stuff, so if you're interested, head on over there. For now, thanks for watching. And hey, while you're here, why not check out a few other episodes of Dalton Draws? If you like the Ogerpon drawing, you'll love this episode where I drew a ton of Gen 9 Pokemon. Anyway, that's all for now. Later.